Hi, everybody. We're in the northern mountain climb of Japan, enjoying the sunny weather. And we just got back from the ICCF Cold Fusion Conference, where Bob gave a spectacular presentation.
Oh, thank you. You're too kind.
Of Matsumoto's work before, a group of the top scientists in the cold fusion field in the world. And so we're just out here enjoying the fresh air and the mountain air and the mountain vegetables.
That, and yesterday we went and visited some natural LENR reactors, didn't we?
Yes, indeed.
And enjoyed the thermal heat that they produce and the minerals that they synthesize. Yeah, and that was just up the road here. It's this weird place. It's got this artificial lake, which is just over there. You'll get a shot of it later. And it has this mountain, which apparently, for some reason, this hot stuff comes out of the ground. And they have lots of thermal spas around here. So that was really rather nice yesterday, wasn't it? We actually walked up to where it's coming out of the ground.
To the source, and there's like 7 hot springs up there. We're actually standing on the ground of hot spring water coming out of the ground right here. It's been amazing.
And actually Matsumoto himself talked about how volcanic activity and earthquakes and all this kind of aspects were actually a form of ball lightning occurring under the ground. But then, of course, the mainstream doesn't even believe ball lightning exists. What is ball lightning, Paul?
Well, if you think about it, what is ball lightning in the ground as well? So you can look at the magma moving within the center of the earth, as Matsumoto spoke about. But I think also this water pressure, and you have this hydrodynamic pressure going against quartz in the rocks, and you got a piezoelectric, you got charge, you've got minerals, you got evolution, transmutation of different elements happening, heating the water and the water coming up to the surface.
And it's all about bringing charge together, isn't it? Cohering that charge. And you do a bit of that, don't you, in your lab? You take a lot of power from capacitor banks or from Tesla coils, and you're throwing it into a point. What can we expect from your lab in there and the outskirts of Prague?
Before I answer this question, I would like to share with you how excited I am from visiting this conference and meet you guys, because I have been working for more than almost 30 years in the era in the field of high energy accelerator kind of. So we were studying the heavy ion collisions at various accelerators around the globe. Even here in Japan, in Tsukuba. Mm-hmm. In Russia, and lately, obviously, in US, the relativistic heavy ion collider, and the best now, the Large Hadron Collider at CERN. So, and we were studying the hydrodynamics and the Quark-gluon plasma, right? And I was always excited at the beginning, before I really start to understand that somehow we are repeating the same questions, and or in the conferences we are discussing the same topics over and over again, right? And I kind of lost a little bit my faith. What is that good for, right?
Mm-hmm. Right.
And then I met Bob some while ago, and since then I kind of start to be excited again, even on my field, the Quark-gluon plasma and the hydrodynamics, right? So now I switched the gear kind of couple of years ago, and we have now the private laboratory. We have our own foundation supporting the laboratory. And yes, we are very happy that our first experiment with the ball lightnings are ongoing already, right? So we are still in the so to speak, stage on repeating kind of, the experiment which has been done, but there is a lot of ahead of us. So I'm really excited to see my Quark-gluon plasma in action again.
But without a massive facility smashing things together with vast numbers of megawatts being employed.
We'll do it very gently.
And that is the thing about, actually, we're standing here in one of the most beautiful places in Japan. And nature always tries to do things the most efficient way possible. It doesn't literally create massive colliders, although one could argue that happens in the cosmos.
Sure.
But as a general principle, its organization of energy is into a coherent state. And a lot of people say that the universe is always proceeding to a state of more disorder. But actually, life is the opposite thing. And that is what's so interesting about ball lightning. It seems to be a non-organic form of life that is able to self-organize produce a boundary like a living organism, like a human does. It produces a boundary, and then it uses its inputs and its outputs to go through and interact with its environment and organisms, one could argue, of a similar kind.
Yeah, absolutely.
And if you observe the small ball lightning in the vacuum chamber, you cannot avoid the impression that these are living beings.
Yes, exactly. And then the question comes, are they thinking? And then we come on to consciousness.
The correlation to consciousness.
And we're all very much into what is consciousness, right? So you've thought a lot about that, haven't you?
Absolutely. You know, I was inspired, when I was kind of young student, I was inspired by Roger Penrose's book, you know, where he discussed that without the consciousness, before we integrate somehow the consciousness into equations of physics, right, we will never be able to make a further breakthrough, right? And that inspires me a lot. And since then I'm thinking, you know, what the quantum mechanics says about the consciousness.
And Tesla said something similar, like he said something, and I'm going to be paraphrasing here, maybe someone could get it right for me, but it's something like when science starts looking at the non-physical, they'll make more strides forward in a short period of time than in hundreds of years. I've completely butchered that quote, but you guys know what I'm talking about because you are the experts.
And this is all part of the alchemical process, is working with nature, in harmony with nature, and actually understanding nature and accelerating natural processes in the way nature would do it. Instead of the traditional approach that we've been doing for the last few thousand years, is like everything we do, we build square boxes, you know, we blow things up in internal combustion engines and everything. We tap the energy for its resources and oil in the ground, but not paying attention to how nature does it in the most simplest way. So with this LENR type approach that we're looking at, we're talking about creating matter from energy, transmutations, and also energy from matter. And the amount of energy that we can produce from a very small amount of matter would be doing it the most efficient way, the way nature would do it naturally.
And in fact, the whole process really is like learning how actually nature does it. So alchemy is the predecessor to chemistry, and advanced chemistry is catalytic chemistry, and what we're looking at is catalytic so-called interactions of nucleons and nuclei. And it turns out that, you know, and you'll learn a bit more about this at the conference in September, that I'm of the mind that actually the catalytic part of chemistry is also the same process that's give us access. And in fact, the whole thing is the same process. It's just shades of gray. And actually normal traditional science, you know, they've got a lot right. They've given us the modern world, computers, whatever. But there is this discipline separation that you see in universities, and you will have experienced it. I certainly experienced it when I visited Aarhus a number of years ago, where they have chemistry that's looking at electron volts, and they've got the physics department that's looking at millions of electron volts, and there's this huge gulf that no one's looking at in the middle. And if the process is on a continuum, which nature is, there's all frequencies in light, there's all frequencies in sound, you can imagine there is a scenario where accessing tools within those frequencies that are between chemistry and nuclear science will give us a whole new understanding of how to work with nature.
And biology as well. So when you get down to the fundamentals of physics, chemistry, and biology, it's all about the charge. In fact, everything in the universe is this is all electrical phenomenon that we're experiencing in this reality that we call reality. And so we're getting to the bottom of it and being able to use it all in its greatest potential, and that will give us infinite amounts of energy. We'll be able to clean the environment and restore the damage that we've done. There's an infinite possibility of where we're going here, and we're so close.
And
so
I also love the approach of synthesis, that we are going actually the opposite direction than what the modern world is doing, kind of to separate, itemize, divide. We were always encouraged, kind of in my own discipline, kind of to look broader, right? But the field itself doesn't let you to look the things from broader perspective, because you are pushed to be expert in very narrow-minded.
The blinders are on, and don't pay any attention to the department down the hall.
The number of times where someone who's been researching into physics starts thinking about consciousness, and then they're peers kind of disown them.
Right.
I mean, Brian Josephson is an example.
Exactly.
He looked at sort of non-physical things because his work on the Josephson junction, which he won the Nobel Prize for, the Josephson effect, that led him to think, well, this is a kind of like being able to go through matter, and it's a quantum effect. Maybe that's what's going on in the brain, and he started to explore that. But he's been there's a certain disowning that goes on, which I think is uncomfortable. But you're not going to get that here.
No.
If you're the sort of person that thinks all these things are connected, we're the kind of people that are your kind of people.
Going to connect we'll connect your connections.
By the way, the Josephson, there is a term known as a Nobel disease, right? You know,
Yeah, and null hypothesis.
right.
Yeah, right.
The Nobel disease means that the people who get the Nobel Prize,
Right.
they start to speak more openly, right?
Yeah.
Right.
The rest of
Oh,
the
he came up with that.
Right.
Oh, I didn't realize that.
Wow, nice.
So, Bob, tell us about some of the specifics that we're doing in the Advanced Energy System, some of the experiments that we're going to be doing at Jan's lab.
Yeah, so first we're going to be teaching you the best understanding that we have of how these processes occur. That is going to be in the actual workshop day, and then we're going to take you to the lab day, which is going to be hosted by Jan here in the outskirts of Prague. And we are hopefully doing for the first time in front of a public audience real-time transmutation within minutes, where you will be able to observe the material being analyzed as raw material under scanning electron microscope with electrode discharge spectroscopy, dispersive spectroscopy, and then you'll be able to take those samples, put them into your what you call a dragon arc discharge, if you'd like to describe that a bit more.
Right, the dragon discharge is a discharge from the Tesla transformer tuned to the specific frequency and voltage, which actually the discharges follows the fractal structure dictated by the golden ratio, right? So it's the golden dragon, so to speak, the fractal, the discharge itself. So, and it has an amazing kind of similarity. One can see really the self-organization of the plasma as a conscious object somewhere. We are very excited about that.
And so we're going to be using that with specific materials that you will find out what they are when you come to the conference, and you'll be able to see, we believe, some transmutation occurring in there of and synthesis of materials that do not exist in the starting elements that are being used. We have another experiment where we'll be doing that with ultrasound, and you'll be seeing how the self-organization process works with sound. So one is with plasma with frequencies. One is with water plasma with frequencies, but there are very different scales. And the idea is that you will come and realize that all kinds of energy levels and all kinds of frequencies in nature want to produce this effect. And with those two experiments, I think you're going to firsthand see for the first time, you're going to be the first people to be able to walk into a lab and walk away knowing that this is a thing.
So,
And Paul, you're bringing some equipment over from Canada.
Yeah.
So we are going to have the Therify here, and a few other little bits and pieces.
Yeah,
so what are you up
absolutely.
to?
So we're going to have like various different types of Tesla technology. We're going to have the Therify, and you want to talk about synchronicities. We're going to be talking about the Teslatron, Gaio Belinsky's Teslatron. Well, we got talking with Jan earlier, and he said, "Oh yeah, I worked with Paul LaViolette on the Teslatron." And it's like, I know there's been 3 different groups of people around the world that have attempted replication of the Teslatron, and what are the coincidences of you being one of them, us being the other? It's like, come on, how?
And you'll also be able to handle a device which we believe is showing a telekinetic ability, being able to project energy through your mind conscious and hand interface, such that healers have done in the past, such that people like Ninel Kalegina did, and you'll be able to test your ability and maybe even hone your ability. And so don't worry if you don't get it first time, but I think over a couple of days you'll know when you've got the right energetics to maximize your performance, and also you'll physically see the ability. Now, we've all had a go here. I'm a bit of a freak, it would seem, but I'm aware of it, so it's not a surprise. But I don't know whether it's because I'm in this beautiful mountain air and I'm buzzing off the conference, which went very well, and I was soaking in the thermal springs here. So it might just be the chi of the environment, and I've just got very good ability to suck it up. But my wife is also extremely good at it. At first go, she was in the hundreds. So yeah, you all have a chance to experience that, and it's going to be a world first for the public to be able to come in and have a look at that, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So we're looking at the current hypothesis is various pressure gradients in the ether itself,
like the torsion in the medium, which is neutral, but in some senses can partially interact with matter. And this is key to these processes. Is organization of this material and coherence of this material that drags in the other matter and allows for this weak interactions and condensation process that allows for the transmutation. And I believe and will argue that is also the basis for consciousness.
Absolutely.
So I welcome you all to come to Prague and join Roger.
So folks, you'll see this. You can download a 14-page complete description. We're going from ancient to future alchemy. The first couple of days is with Paul, and then we join our team here for the Advanced Energy Systems. And you can see the registration form, and it's all happening in the beginning of the 19th of September. So be there.
See you there.
Looking forward to it, guys. See you there.
What's happening? Is this your train?
Yeah, our job is to make these run on low energy nuclear reactions. Yes.
In order, for example, to write something about
Bogdanovich observed the system running for 2 days. Many people have observed these things running for 2 days. It's just not possible for an electron ion plasma to sit on a piece of metal and glow for 2 days. It has to be something that's superfluid. And the electron, even if the electrons are coherent, the electron ion plasma is not going to last for 2 days.
I found that ingenious because this is really what we observe in the accelerator.
Yes.
People will accept it.
Yes, I know.
But it's, but I still,
it's my evil plan. If they dismiss it, they dismiss their own science.
Exactly. That's really, I love it.
But I think it's the truth. But whatever, it has to be something like that, because the matter goes in as other elements and it comes out as new elements. So it has to be something that resets the clock back to, and I love the fact that Matsumoto had Big Bang, Mini Bang. He recognized that had to be what it was doing.
Hi viewers, this week we're going here. Japan.
Only a matter of time, right? But 10 to the 15 Tesla is what does it. Baryonic matter is disassembled into quark-gluon plasma. This is called color disconfinement of baryons. In a baryon, you have either 2 up, down, and then they're red, green, and blue. They have to add up to white. That's why they're called color. You could speak more about that because that's something that Jan has researched extensively at CERN. And what happens is these fall apart. Now, just like your electrons and your protons are charged particles, these are charged particles as well. So you can create a plasma and a magnetohydrodynamic structure out of your electrons and ions, but you can also create it out of the quarks. Okay? Also, when these are pulled out, the vacuum or the process of the pulling it out with the differential here causes a creation of an antiquark. So you get mesons forming. So anyway, you get a quark-gluon plasma. So what this structure is then gets replaced not by an electron ion plasma, by a quark-gluon plasma. This explains all of the weirdness in LENR. all of the weirdness in LENR. Why, Jan? Why? Because it's the most superfluid thing that exists, known to man, the quark-gluon plasma. When you start spinning that, which is what you need to create the magnetic core, it doesn't stop. And yeah, so in 2017, I saw something going on here in Suhas Ralkal's lab, and that was a hydrodynamic vortex, many of them producing ring solitons and structures like this viewed from the side. And what this looks like is a clover leaf. It's a pattern you see all throughout nature, and it has this area down here behind it where material is sucked in. And I thought this was extraordinary. I'd done a bit of hydrodynamics when I was younger, and I wanted to explain this. It also has these two little notches that come down here. Now, in 2019, I was invited by Sho Jiro here, Kubo. Sho. Yeah, and he asked me to come and test Roish and Amarza's Amarza gas, and I came with a whole load of tests which were trying to break the paradigm of what people thought they understood about Amarza gas. And one of those things was the belief that tungsten was vaporized. I didn't really believe, and we had a high-speed camera looking at it right up close and personal to the actual event. You can go and see those on the Martin Fleischmann Memorial Project's YouTube site. The experiment lasted for about 10-20 seconds at most, and we had white fumes coming off. This was the so-called vaporization, and I had Dr. George Eagley there standing with a face mask before they became fashionable, sucking in these fumes that were coming off. And when we examined on the rod, there was transmutation in every area that was exposed to the HHO gas plasma, and inside the fibers of the face mask there was chunks of tungsten with the same transmutation products in and around it. So from my point of view, this is an instantaneous low-energy nuclear reaction process, a fission process, or something going on. That's what I knew until I found this. And this was on the electrode, on the welding rod, and it frankly scared me. It was a bit of an ontological shock, because what you're seeing here is a vortex that's on top of another vortex, and then there's another thing down here with a spot and this wavy line, and this whole area here is like a carbon film. It's a carbon film only on one side, and over here you've got all of the typical elements you see coming out of LENR synthesis, particularly of heavy elements. So if you put palladium in there, you put other heavy elements like tungsten in there, you see all of these elements in there rather than the ones you would expect from light element fusion. And so I've done many videos on this, but what I realized is the exact same magnetohydrodynamic structure in this case fitted over with this round area here, perfectly fitting in this part of the structure and this wavy line. So if we go back to the original image, what we know from the hydrodynamics is that the from the hydrodynamics is that this is twisting this way. Okay, so if the same thing is occurring on the tungsten filament, tungsten rod rather, here, then this is twisting there. So material is being ripped off here and being deposited down there. But because it's a vortex, it gets pushed over in a wave over there. I was, I don't know, I couldn't call it panic. I couldn't call it anything other than complete shock. And I waited for Alan Goldwater, my friend and colleague, and it was analyzed on his instrument, his SEM instrument down in California. And I told him, when people understand what is on this electrode, it's going to beep, melt their brains. Beep, melt their brains. The way that Tesla's carbon button light did.
It looks exactly like the tungsten. Is it tungsten?
What? This is aluminium. Why? Because Tesla found that the heaviest element you could use to produce pure etheric matter rays was aluminium. It was the best. Why? Because it's highly conductive, it's paramagnetic, and it's a light element.
Yeah.
So you can fully Quark-gluon plasmarify it. Trademark. Here is Matsumoto's generation of carbonized film coming out of a ball lightning structure. And this is a carbonized film with an iron sphere at the end here. This is in 1997. This is in a plasma reactor. We have the iron spheres, the crenellated spheres, at the end of all of the carbon that's deposited here on a pure copper oxide and zinc oxide layer.
So can you explain what was your experiment?
In this experiment, it is a plasma chamber which Jan Rack replicated absolutely first time just last week. And David Boutelier replicated first time. And I've asked him to try and replicate this of Henk Ewan in Holland.
Hello.
So it's a low pressure, hydrogen enriched, low pressure atmospheric air environment. And then it has some, it has some DC bias, about 200 volts, and then up to 700 volts of varying AC pulses on the DC bias. And you've got a more capable system, and we're going to have some fun with that. This ball lightning image, we've got a much clearer version down there, and we can go even better than that because we've got all the negatives. We can produce these incredibly large images from his work. But this was actually taken from a video frame, and he stitched together video frames. We did this with modern technology. But this is the ball lightning. This is the fact that it moves matter around it, and it gouges a trail. This is in Lyons, nickel diamond.
So, can you say more? That was this also a plasma experiment?
No, yes and no. It's in electrical discharge in water. So,
So it's electrical discharge.
yeah, so you're going to have plasma in there. And you're going to see that in video. Because we have all the videos that were going to be thrown away, but because I came along, they kept everything. And so we have all these. And you know, when you see it, he did a unique process. And I'll show you over there. But he took microscope objectives with a high quality video camera, and he's looking at like 2 or 3 millimeters of the experiment. So he's seeing a 1 millimeter palladium electrode or titanium or iron or whatever it was in a 3 millimeter field of view. And then he's recording that at 60 frames a second in 1990. It's totally unique work. Okay, so that is his, when we met him, we showed him that we'd been able to replicate without knowing he'd done it, and that third parties had replicated his observations without knowing that he'd done it first. And I think that's the best type of replication. So it was beautiful support based after he had been so roundly mocked. And you know, if you want to lead this field, there's a whole area that really gives you insight about what's going on that no one is doing, right? I did a bit, but he pioneered this. I thought I was doing something original, but I'm always sure that someone's done something before me. And I wasn't surprised to find that your father had done this unique thing. So he has his cold fusion experiment in here. He has a very high quality video camera here. A front attached to that, he's got microscope plan objectives. So in this image here, you have, this is 1 millimeter across, palladium electrode, okay? And this, you'll see, is the experiment. So he's moving from 0 volts up to 40 volts. And as you go up to 40 volts, the evolution of gas increases, increases. And what he notes in this paper from 1996, shows so many pieces of data that people think they have found since. It's a literal gold mine, this one paper that's in the book, right? Now you can see he's getting up towards 40 volts and it looks absolutely insane. And then what he notes that between 40 and 70 volts, that there is what he calls a pinch effect. So you can start to see sparking coming on at the end here. There's a pinch effect where he says that causes suppression of the evolution of gases. But you have to remember that he's also saying that there is something in the base of this electrode that is causing clusters of hydrogen. So the hydrogen isn't becoming hydrogen gas, it's becoming bound into a cluster. Okay? So now you start to see the suppression of the gas evolution. And there was a Chinese author, and when you actually slow this down, you literally see these explosions, literally like nuclear bombs going off, and the hydrodynamics coming off, and sometimes they're coming out into the water.
Cavitation.
Yes. It's cavitation, but you have the plasma in the cavitation structure. He has other ones which I can show you. You know, we're here long enough. I can show you some of these videos where he's zoomed in so far, you can literally see the bubble evolving out of a crack in the palladium. So he did this absolute pioneering use of videography, producing data that still to this day stands as some of the best in the field. Now, he believed that there was this thing, and he called it the NATO model. I've described how you get the itons. The itons then bind together into a cluster and produce a mesh. He believed this because of what he was seeing. He was seeing these kind of regular geometric things coming out of the system, and he was imagining that it looked like the fermented glutinous stuff that gets stuck when you have a natto bean on the outside, right? And this is a structure that was produced in an experiment. It's blown up.
Compositionally analyze that?
Yes. And these are the typical elements in LENR.
Yeah. See, for example, Randall Mills also seems to observe these filamentous objects. And
yes.
He calls it hydrino compounds.
Well, of course he does.
So
that's his bag.
We are also trying to reproduce those experiments. Mm-hmm. But compositionally, what are these?
If you go into this particular paper, this one here by Bogdanovich et al. He shows where we'll talk about this later, and water flow plasma discharge, they produce monopole with a strand in between. And those are magnetic because they've got monopole ends. They've got magnetic ends, right? And they have a strand of something and it floats around in the video, right? These are the things that Mills thinks he's invented, right? Yeah. He may have done, but it's also in this guy's work from the early 2000s, right?
They might have also observed.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah.
Right? But what I believe is going on here is, because we've seen this in extreme detail, is that within these macroclusters, it's fractal and the substructures, and they have these balls, and the balls can be of different materials. They can be silicon dioxide, they can be iron oxide, so on. And the material goes inside these balls through one end. And it produces a density that is ridiculous. And this is the only picture you need to know, because we have a lead sphere, and the volume of the carbon that's been synthesized inside the lead sphere is far higher than the inside of the lead sphere. So you do not need anything other than preschool understandings of putting blocks into holes to know that that isn't possible unless something is going on interesting with these carbon atoms. And that something must be that they are coherent in here in some way. That's it. You know that. So if these are the little balls here, right, then they are spewing out behind of them strands. And that's one thing that he observed a lot of. Strings. And the strings can be of the material in the experiment itself. So we've seen this in so many experiments. What happens is the magnetohydrodynamic structure produces a non-radiating boundary, and everything inside that material disappears. And he saw that too. It's the principle of the 1920s technology called electrode-discharge wire machining, which no one has been able to explain. And I took 90 seconds of taking a used brass wire electrode discharge machining thing, putting it under the electron microscope, and I see the scallop sections taken out. And then over to the side, there was the yin-yang structure with a sphere of carbon, a sphere of the brass, and then this wavy line coming down and carbon on one side, which is the ohm, right?
So, okay, go on.
It goes, whatever you've got, into the structure. It then starts to rapidly produce iron. It produces iron, 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 iron. There's a little gold, something that's 455 AMU, something that's 700 AMU. Oh. Yeah. Now here, this is what we were able to give him in the 20 minutes when we met him before he sadly passed away a month later. And these are replications of some of his findings by third parties in things that I had analyzed or third parties had analyzed.